Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the April 2, 2025 meeting of the Orangetown Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a special meeting. My name is Ozzie Parenti, and seated at the table, why don't you introduce yourself?
Judy Smith.
Tom Tarenti.
Paul Kaplan.
Kevin Cornell.
Jack Demerjen, zoning administrator.
Okay, it's a special meeting tonight, called for the purpose, I'll read the item, the one item on the agenda. The Town Plan and Zoning Commission will hold a special meeting to conduct a public workshop with representatives of BFJ Planning, the town's planning consultant for the Plan of Conservation and Development revision. The purpose of this public meeting is to seek feedback on proposed recommendations related to housing, land use, sustainability, transportation, economic development, and more. So, without delay then, I will introduce Frank Fish, who is part of the consulting team from BFJ Planning. And he'll take it from there.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I'm just going to start this, and then the rest of our team from BFJ Planning is also going to help in this presentation. And then what we hope to do is take a short break after it, and then maybe divide into tables. And I'll explain that as we go along. So we've been working with planning and zoning, because planning and zoning is under state law in New York, in Connecticut here. Got to get my states right. Here in Connecticut, state law requires that the plan of conservation and development be approved by the P&Z. So they've really been the group we've been working with and assisting in developing the plan. And then the consultant team is here, and as each person gets up, I'll introduce them, or they'll introduce themselves. So we think we can go through this in perhaps a half an hour, and then we'll take a little break after that. So here's sort of an agenda for this evening. We'll make this presentation, maybe take a quick coffee, and I thank Jack for providing coffee for all of us at the break, and coffee and from Dunkin' Donuts. And we thought then during the break we'll put out some sort of cards for who's going to be among us at each table. There's people here who are resource people from our team, like in transportation. Each table can talk about all of the aspects of the plan, but we'll have a member of our team at each of the tables. And then we've invited, obviously P&Z members can sit at any table they choose, and so you'll have one of us, one of them at the tables, and we're hoping then that at those tables, you have a discussion of any items that you want, but you'll have some resource people at each table. And then at the end, we're hoping that you could develop among yourselves just a spokesperson from a table, and maybe at the very end of this tonight, get up and sort of report your findings. And that will help us tremendously in writing the final chapter of the plan. That's the one chapter that's not written yet. All the other chapters are written. P&Z's gone over them. They all have their own copies. But the final chapter is the future land use plan and implementation. So we want to be able to do that. So your report back is important to us, and your comments. So I'm just going to say very briefly, because I think some of you may have been at the first workshop, what a POCD is. It's basically required by state law every 10 years. So every municipality in Connecticut has to do one every 10 years. You're basically on time for this, and we'll be able to, if our schedule keeps up, Jack will be able to send it on behalf of the commission to the Regional Planning Agency and what's called OPM, the Office of Policy and Management in Hartford, for their review. Under state law, we got to give them 65 days to review it so they can do it over the summer, and we'll aim for a hearing in September. But the POCD is just, it sets the stage of what's the vision for the future for the next 10 years. And really, it's it's a document, though, that could set the stage for any zoning changes, if any. But actually, some court cases have said if you do make a zoning change, it ought to be based upon a well-reasoned plan, and this hopefully will be the P&Z's well-reasoned plan. Doesn't require them to make any zoning changes, or doesn't require any capital budget issues to be executed, but it sets the stage for zoning, and also it could set the stage for some capital budget expenditures. So it's a sort of to-do list here, as you can see, for the next 10 years. And then the commission will decide, too, if they want to, sign a subcommittee, or they want to have Jack every year remind them of, hey, where are they, how are they doing in implementing the plan, that type of thing. So, see if I can get this to move forward. Hey, Mark, you've got more of a touch than I do. It should. Yeah. Good. I thought it was this one here. Okay. Yeah, we're sort of frozen. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, I think I've sort of covered this one on the POCD and what it requires. Let me see if I can get this to move forward again. Good. So, project overview. This is just a timeline. Some of you may have seen this, but I'll just try to summarize it a little bit. We're at the red circle, sort of month 7 or so in this, and that's the second public workshop. We started, obviously, last year, summer, fall of last year, and had a first workshop, which you can see there in that orange dot over in November. So this is our second workshop. What we've done is, as each chapter of the plan was done, we went over it with P&Z. We made revisions and changes based on their comments, and all of those chapters have now been put up online. So I hope you've had a chance to take a look at those. If you haven't, it's still okay, because we can go over them tonight a little bit at the tables. Plus, what's going to happen is there's going to be a formal public hearing on this in September, so you'll have plenty of time to read through it. But we try to get this workshop to get your input so that it helps us complete the document, if you will. So that's where we are tonight, and this will continue so that we give the Regional Planning Agency the summer. I'm basically saying the summer. The law requires 65 days for them to review it before the commission holds their public hearing, and the commission would be able to hold a public hearing in September, say mid-September. Everybody's back from the summer. Everybody's had time, we hope, to review everything. So that's the sort of overall schedule with this. And then I just want to cover briefly these chapters. Basically 9 chapters, 8 of which have been completed and are online, and we're going to summarize those kind of right now. The final chapter we will write after your input tonight, and then the commission will review that, we hope in May, and after that we make final revisions of the draft. So the draft goes out to the agencies, be available all summer for everyone to look at and examine. So you all will have the same amount of time as the agencies do. And then in mid-September or so, there'll be a public hearing on it. Then after the hearing, we meet again with the commission. They evaluate the comments at the public hearing, and then we produce the final plan, which I think, or I hope, could be, ready for adoption, perhaps in October or November. So we'll be on time to complete it this year, when it should be actually completed in 2005, just to meet our 10-year type of deadline. So that's the. So I'm going to turn this over to Suzanne Goldberg in our office. She's going to go through a few things, particularly the survey that a lot of people filled out. So, Suzanne.
Thanks, Frank. So my name is Suzanne Goldberg. I'm the project manager with BFJ Planning. And the first thing I wanted to go through tonight is the summary of the public survey results. So in addition to in-person forums such as the public workshops and the public hearing, we also wanted to give an opportunity for people who might not be able to come to these sorts of events to share their input. So we opened up the survey for about a month, a little over a month, and we got over 300 responses online, and these responses helped inform the recommendations that we ultimately made in the plan. I'll just give a high-level overview right now, but at each of the tables there is a packet that has the statistics on each question that was asked and what the results were like. So I'll just start off with some of the top strengths that we saw. People identified schools, quality of life, location, and parks and open space as some of the town's greatest strengths. Some of the biggest concerns that were mentioned were affordable cost of living, taxes, and public services like trash pickup, snow plowing, etc. In terms of housing, people said that the high priority is to preserve the existing residential neighborhoods, and most people believe that Orange has the right amount and mix of housing types. For transportation problems that people regularly encounter, around 55% said that they experience traffic congestion regularly, 53% encounter speeding, and 43% reported issues of bicycle safety. And then around 68% of respondents felt that they were uncomfortable walking or thought that sidewalks were ultimately inadequate. So next we're going to get into some of the preliminary vision and recommendations for the plan itself. So this is the exciting part that we want your feedback on tonight. For the vision statement here, this is what we gleaned from the public survey, from our conversations with the P&Z and the previous public workshop, but this is also something that we invite you to give feedback on tonight. In terms of the overarching vision statement for this plan, we wanted to put this out there as an idea for you all to comment on. The town of Orange strives to preserve existing neighborhoods, enhance environmental and open space preservation, support local businesses and commercial areas, and maintain and improve community infrastructure, including facilities, utilities, and roads. So that will be the first chapter of the plan, and each chapter after this, I'll introduce some. Mark and Michelle and Frank from our team will introduce them, but the first one is the introduction and vision statement. The second one is demographics, and the main thing that I wanted to point out here is that approximately between 2010 to 2020, the population increased by about 2%, and we expect that in the coming years, the population will continue to increase, at a lower rate or about the same, as much of the land area has been developed in the town, and also there's a trend nationally of lower birth rates or smaller households. So that's something that we've seen across the state in our work in Connecticut. And I also just want to point out that there's that pretty significant drop in 1921 in population, and that's actually when the Connecticut legislature decided to separate Orange from West Haven. So that was just an interesting finding in our data that I wanted to point out. I'm going to introduce Michelle next, who will talk about the next couple of chapters.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Gilman, a planner with BFJ, and I'll be spending the next couple minutes chatting about housing and neighborhoods and land use and zoning. So up here you see we have the high-level recommendations for housing and neighborhoods. The first off is just preserving existing residential neighborhoods. This really is a reflection of the feedback we heard in the survey and a continuation of Orange's existing land use policy. Also included is continuing to support a diverse housing stock to accommodate the population's evolving housing needs. This is really a reflection of the efforts that the town has put in recent years. For example, the adoption of the senior living district and continuing to support that work. And lastly, continuing to promote opportunities for affordable housing. Next up for land use and zoning. This works hand in hand, this first one with the housing and neighborhoods recommendation, but continuing to maintain existing community character. continuing to preserve and expand open space. Also wanted to include a mention of agricultural uses and their importance to the local economy and identity. Also incorporating Route 1 as an important commercial corridor. And then also that land use regulations need regular review and updates to ensure consistency. And with that, I'll pass it back to Frank to discuss economic development.
On economic development, you can see here what we're trying to do is more strengthen and support the existing business community, a good part of which is located along Route 1. So we're not anticipating any expansion in terms of zoning or in terms of land use for business development. We think Route 1 is the and south of that is a very good place for commercial development and industrial development, which characterizes the area now. But within that, there are some vacancies, and there is also turnover in buildings. So to try to promote adaptive reuse and redevelopment, support workforce development, try to support the business community in the areas they're currently in, with the zoning, the basic zoning that's in place there now and within the area that's located. But also to think of things outside that might influence Orange. There might be some tourism possibilities, community events, and to maintain an overall competitive business climate. That's what the economic development chapter is about, in trying to support that, support small businesses in the town. I might mention one thing we do point out, and that is there's a very small business area north of us here, just north of Town Hall, which I think it would be good if the town could support the actually just upgrading of that area and support the owner in attempts to do that. It would be very helpful to a more historic, let's say, town center. What I'm used to in Connecticut, I live here in Madison, and it's just, I think that current business area, while it serves people well, I think could be enhanced in terms of its rehabilitation over time. So that's one thing that is in the economic development chapter. But with that, I'm going to turn it on transportation to Mark.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Frecker, also with BFJ Planning. And I want to start with, this is a recommendation that we kind of stressed this theme at the first workshop, and this is to continue to coordinate with CTDOT with the state on ongoing and potential future roadway improvement studies and projects in the town. And the emphasis here is that many of the town's, highest trafficked roadways are in the state's jurisdiction. So it's a reminder that any recommendation within that pertains to roadways such as Route 1, Derby Avenue, Orange Central Road, Route 121, Racebrook, et cetera, those are all in state jurisdiction, so any improvements there or studies have to be coordinated with the state. Beyond that, generally, we did you see it here on the right side of the screen, we conducted a crash analysis based on, crash data from the state, from police reports directly. And this just gives a sense of, it's not exactly shocking, but the, more trafficked roadways are, the most crash incidents. So generally looking to, roadway safety, crash data is a good indicator of areas where there can be improvements. So the map shows, Route 1, Derby Avenue as high traffic corridors. The state, of course, there's already improvements going on Route 1. I'll touch on that in a moment, but just, having continued coordination on improving the safety of those roadways and making sure that crash data continue to be evaluated, year to year. Also, we've heard a lot, including in the survey, about addressing, speeding and other traffic calming concerns in residential areas. This comes down, largely to enforcement of speed limits. So that's a bit of a recommendation, is working, with local police entities and to, keep maintaining the enforcement of these roadways just to make sure that speeding is at a minimum, and the potential to explore certain traffic calming measures on certain roadways. The next recommendation is to ensure the vitality and traffic efficiency of Route 1. This is, really key for the town. It's the busiest corridor. It's a huge economic, asset to the community, both for residents, also for visitors and those who pass through daily. So here is just the reminder that, the state has worked on improvements between Racebrook to Lambert. That was completed previously. That section of Route 1, a key improvement was the introduction of a center lane on Route 1 in that segment. But ongoing work is, looking further to the east, or sorry, to the west, from the Milford border to Lambert. That's the current segment that's being improved with similar aspects like a turning lane, looking for access management improvements, which involves how the location of the driveways to individual sites are situated, making sure that it's an efficient access network for Route 1. And also the one thing that we were looking into and recommend in the chapter is other improvements within the parking lots off of Route 1. So, what is the internal circulation looking like on individual sites and businesses? How can that be improved through like the site plan approvals, making sure that there's efficient circulation within parking lots? Also, the recommendation to continue to improve pedestrian facilities. This is, of course, town-wide, but really the focus is on Route 1. Some of the improvements, the state has made, they're looking at potential sidewalks on Route 1. We just want to emphasize the longer-term vision to have sidewalks on both sides of Route 1, extending across the town as a longer-term goal. And even looking to, how to extend the sidewalks or the pathway that exists currently from Town Hall, connecting that to Route 1 for a longer-term strategy, just to improve connectivity from Route 1 to the municipal, Town Hall. Also looking to bike safety. This came about in the survey, concerns about bicyclist safety and how to improve that. It's not an easy solution, and I think bike safety it is worth its own study. That does not necessarily mean there needs to be bike lanes everywhere. Of course, that's not the only approach. The idea is to look at strategies like share roads in certain locations, making visibility for cyclists better, and just coordinating more regionally. Where are bicyclists going through town, and how can conditions be improved just to enhance safety for them. The point there is a bit further study to better understand the needs of cyclists and where to make improvements. And then lastly, CT Transit is a major partner in terms of public transit in the area, and the town should just, we recommend to continue partnering with CT Transit. Really, as a regional entity, looking at changing, evolving demographics, making sure year to year that changing demographics are accounted for, and who uses the bus system and what locations are that are being accessed, and making sure that the service matches those needs. Okay, I'll pass it back to Suzanne.
Thanks, Mark. So these are the last couple of chapters, and then we'll get into hearing from you all. So something that we know from the last POCD and also from our interactions with the public and our interviews with various stakeholders is that the preservation of parks, agricultural lands, open space, historic resources are all very central to the character and quality of life for Orange residents. So in this chapter, we wanted to take a close look at open space, including parks, agricultural spaces, historic assets, and community and municipal facilities. So the first goal here is to continue open space preservation efforts, and we know that the town has taken huge efforts in recent years to, as opportunities present themselves, to convert managed open space or private land into dedicated open space. That is, a huge effort of the Conservation Commission and the Orange Land Trust. So to continue those efforts and support them, to document and promote recreational spaces. So this could perhaps be through something like the Conservation Commission's Guide to Open Spaces online, creating a trail map, maintaining investment in recreational facilities. So this could be something like modernizing existing recreational facilities or making accessibility upgrades as appropriate, continuing the agricultural and farmland preservation efforts, and also finding ways to support local farmers, protecting historic resources, including those in the historic district, and lastly, maintaining and improving community facilities and services. So So this is the 8th and final chapter that we'll go through tonight, and this addresses infrastructure and sustainability. So in addition to water, sewer, it also focuses on the preservation of natural resources in the town. So the first goal is to manage water quality and stormwater. So this deals with both quantity and quality of water, and also something important that we've seen in recent years is really to address the storm drainage issues throughout the town. Promote sustainable building practices and encourage energy saving practices. These go hand in hand, and this can be something like providing incentives for those who to create more energy efficient buildings. And then lastly, managing sewage treatment and public water supply. So maintaining the existing capacity of Orange's sewer system, which you can see in the pink areas, and evaluating those infrastructure upgrades and making those for sewer or septic as necessary. So I'm going to pass it off to Frank to go over what happens next.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I just want to cover just a little bit tonight, but also where we are. So just, you've seen this a little bit already, but we're at the public workshop tonight. What we hope is after hearing from you tonight and discussing things with you, we'll be able to do that final chapter. That's the one chapter not done, chapter 9. And then we'll go over at their May meeting with the commission that chapter, get their comments. That would put Jack in a position to send a draft out, and the whole draft will be put online. So you'll have the whole thing for the whole summer to look through. And then also, of course, the Regional Planning Agency will have it, and OPM in Hartford will have it. And they have 65 days to get their comments back, so they should be getting their comments back to Jack, we presume, by the end of August. We'd then meet with the commission, and then we hope to have a public hearing sort of mid-September. This is up to the commission setting a date for that. So at the public hearing, that's when, that's a legal public hearing. So any comments can be submitted in either writing or from you directly at the hearing. The hearing's different than a workshop, so there's not a back and forth discussion. It's sort of what are comments on the plan that you want changed, or you may find the plan to be something you support and you say that. There can be any type of comments that you want. And then after that, we meet with the commission again. They make any final edits based on what they heard, and then they would be in a position perhaps in October or November to adopt with a change or two that they might want. So that's the process. So we're in pretty good shape. We're on time with this, and we'll, by getting it finished by this year, you'll also meet your 10-year sort of guideline with OPM. And then I just wanted to discuss tonight just a little bit, coffee break. What, I go too fast? So yeah, we're going to have a coffee break. But what we're hoping is after the coffee break, if I think there's enough people between those of you who are here, ourselves and commission members, to maybe do 3 tables. If we sit 6 to 7 people at a table. If we need 4, we can do 4. And 4 is great for us because there's 4 of us. We'll split up on each table. What we want to do is put a sign out on while you take 5 minutes or 10 minutes for a coffee break. While you're doing that, we'll put out some cards. For instance, Suzanne talked about both environment, sustainability, open space. She also talked about infrastructure, utilities. She'll be at a table labeled that. And then Michelle talked about land use and zoning issues, housing issues. She'll be at a table. She'll be a resource person at that table. Mark's our traffic person, talked about traffic. He'll be at a table on traffic. And I'll probably be at, if we do a 4th table, I'll be at that. And if we don't, I'll be at the land use table. And then the commission will be able to just split up into tables also. So I'm guessing as to what we do here, 3 or 4 tables, but we'll decide during the coffee break. And then the idea, though, is at the table, you'll all have, if somebody could take notes, You've all got pads at every table. If you don't, we'll get you. Don't worry, we'll get pads. We'll move the pads to that middle table. And then if you could spend maybe a half an hour, whatever's comfortable for you, half an hour, 45 minutes, discussing any issues you have. You have a commission member there. You have one of our team there. And again, because Mark's at transportation doesn't mean that's the table that, needs to talk about transportation. It's just that if you're particularly interested in it, you might want to sit at that table. We hope every table can discuss every item. You're not limited in any way. That way you don't have to move from table to table. And then we're hoping at the end someone could volunteer. We usually don't find any problems with that. Volunteer to summarize, the tables. What are the table's findings or questions? But if you can do it in about 3 minutes or so, and let's say there's 4 tables, there's 12 minutes, and we got plenty of time. So I think that's what our plan is for that. And so, somebody could take notes if you're somebody who's comfortable taking notes, and if somebody could be a spokesperson from the table, then at the end, we can have a nice discussion of the 3 or 4 tables that are here. And the commission is going to be at, commissioners hear that, and you'll be able to talk to them directly and to us directly at the tables, and then summarize. Each table can summarize their table in say 3 or 4 minutes, and you hear people speaking that way at the end, and we ought to be able to be finished. I think probably reasonably around 8:30 or 8:45, something like that. So with that, I think we could take. I jumped ahead there. We could take maybe a 5 to 10 minute break. I again thank Jack for getting coffee and there's coffee there, and so maybe get back together. Say 20 of or 7:45. Thanks very much.
And so that was the areas that we focused on the most. We went through the existing chapters and noted a few corrections, updates, and things like that need to bring it back up to information that we have available that has changed since the last time this was done. It was suggested that more detail be put in on the open space recommendation descriptions so people can learn about it, and to highlight more to include the PA 490 farm assessments, and to discuss the new Lesniak property that was just purchased, to make sure that that is noted. Along that lines, we went through the recommendations, and we did not find anything that we would really change too much. We thought maybe perhaps to add a little bit more focus on public education, on the historical aspects of town, and also along in the open space conservation portion of it, to perhaps note more education into native plants and removing invasive plants, which would go under the sustainability portion of the recommendations. And other than that, we just went through the facts that were there, and some of them that we hadn't heard about were interesting, and we thought that it was a good plan.
By the way, I forgot to mention too, where if you've taken notes like you did, we could save those, because we'll rip them off, and we're going to do a summary of this for the P&Z. So if we could save those notes, that'd be great. But we have a speaker here, I think.
Hello. So yeah, we were the transportation table, but we mostly focused on that. We did touch another couple of subjects. We were surprised about the congestion. I think it was felt at the table that Orange is doing a lot better with congestion, especially along the Post Road. The addition of the turning lanes has helped that. It was felt that some of the businesses had to give up some of their green space, which takes away from some things, to benefit another. There was talk about bus stops and walkways, and if there was for people crossing the roads, if there was better places for people to cross the roads along bus stops, as it was felt the amount of people walking along the Post Road footpaths may not be utilized that well, and do they really need to be put in? Let me see what else we have here. Turning lane, we went over that already. It was brought to our attention about Dogwood Road, that it's used a lot as a cut through, and if there's measures that can be put in the plan for traffic calming, just to slow cars down along smaller residential streets. Then we brought up the Route 34, that it's a high accident area, that a lot of people cut through or run through red lights there, and would the installation of red light cameras, which would automatically ticket people, would that be of benefit, or to get more presence by the police there, just to stop people running red lights, as it's a high accident area. Then on development, we were talking about the plaza in Orange Centre, where M&T Bank is, and Orange Convenience, that there should be a plan in place for that to be, converted into a nice central hub for town. We have a lot of business along the Post Road, but that would be a great focal point or for some small businesses, cafes, a small restaurant, deli, such as that. And then some info on the open space, that we have a lot of open space, but it might not be utilized, maintained as best as possible, and that we could get a bit more information out to new residents as to, where all the open space is and how it can be used and whatnot. And that's us.
And I think we're going to end up with the chair of P&Z as the spokesman for this table.
I'm not sure I have much else to say after that presentation, because you must have been looking at my notes and covered the exact same things. But yes, that was very, very good. Thank you. The one thing we did talk about, and we didn't talk about as many topics as you did either, but in any event, we did talk about looking at opportunities to improve that local shopping center toward the center of town, either as a commercial space, or possibly a conservation type residential development. But in any event, we thought that the language in the POCD, I think we already have some language there, but we need to go back and maybe beef that up a little bit to make it a little more, welcoming to a potential developer, to try to improve that property. We talked a little bit about, I know there's something in the plan that talks about making it easier to comply with the zoning regulations when it comes to elderly apartments. And I'm not sure what exactly we can do, but again, that's those applications are commonplace for us. I mean, I think it's probably, we handle more of those than anything else we deal with. And the point was made that the requirement for an A2 survey it's expensive and sometimes prohibitively expensive for someone doing a project like that. I'm not sure what we could do in lieu of it, but it's something we want to take a look at and see if we can do better there. We talked about native plants, and I think that was mentioned. And I guess I sort of came in on the end of that discussion, but that would be in connection with landscaping requirements on site plan applications. We would press to require native plants, to meet the site plan requirements. And we also talked about ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We didn't reach any conclusion on that. In fact, we were, there's some thought about possibly putting reference to it in our plan of conservation and development in an effort to get ahead of what the state law might require of us sometime in the future. We opted out of that requirement when we were able to a couple of years ago, but the law can always change. And if it's something we're interested in, or something we have to do even, we may want to think about, you know, a regulation that would allow us to do it our way rather than, you know, what the state requires. But on the other hand, if we mention it, then if we mention it, you know, somebody's going to point to that and say, well, you know, how could you say no to this application because it's in your plan of conservation and development that you'd like to see that type of improvement allowed. So we didn't get too far with that, just a mention of it. And again, we ought to think about whether it should go in the plan of conservation and development at all. Did I miss anything? That's it? All right, I think that's it. But, yeah, I think it's pretty much a repetition of what we talked about before.
Well, this is all very helpful to us, and as I mentioned earlier, then we'll be meeting with, you know, with the commission again next month, and then we'll try to write the final chapter, and we'll emphasize certain things now in the draft, revise it a little bit, and then the final chapter will try to also cover some of these areas. So that's our next plan, and we'll be back before P&Z, and then we'll have a draft plan up online, we hope, for everybody to read. We'll have a full draft over the summer months, and then that'll should set up everything for the public hearing. And I said this at the first workshop. I hope this rarely happens, but I hope it will here. And that is that no one gets up at the public hearing and says, I never heard of this. You know, yeah, that's right. It's going to be on the website for the whole summer. Yeah, I know. It'll be on the website for the whole summer. So hopefully we'll be in a good position for the public hearing you know, in hopefully September, maybe mid-September. This will be up to the commission on dates and so on. So again, I just say thank you to everybody for coming. We really appreciate this input. So thanks a lot. Yeah.
All right, so that concludes our agenda for this evening.
taking motions?
I need a motion to adjourn. the
So
meeting.
moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank.